Welcome to episode 5 of Craft Entries, the podcast about Craft CMS and web development. My name is Thomas Sausen and I have my first guest today. Please welcome Justin Holt.
Hello, folks.
Thank you for taking the time. Before we start, how about you tell the listeners about yourself?
Yeah, so I live in Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States, which is in the southeastern part of the U.S. I'm a longtime web developer. I built my first website in, I want to say, 1996 in college, which is, just the very beginnings of the public web there. So I've built websites for pretty much my entire career out of, while in college and outside of college. I've built every type of site that you can imagine. I've worked in a bunch of different languages. In the last 5 years or so, I have specialized in Craft CMS, Yi, and PHP pretty much exclusively. I do both front end and back end development, and I run my own development and consulting firm, which is funny to say because I'm the only developer on the team and the owner at the same time. So essentially a freelancer that works as a business. I work for many different agencies, both in the US and the EU, on craft development, consulting, training, things like that. I've done a lot of consulting over the last 8 to 10 months, helping other craft development teams kind of level up their proficiency in craft. I also run the local Charlotte Craft Developers Meetup group. We meet monthly, and I have done all of the presentations so far, hoping that somebody local will pick up and do one of them here and there. I do meetups about development topics, like craft security, hosting, things like that. More of a, I don't get super deep in the technicalities of development, but I try to reach a broad range of skill sets and spread the interest of Craft CMS. I definitely love PHP. I love Craft. I love Yi. I'm definitely an evangelist. I've used so many different content management systems over the years, WordPress and Drupal and Expression Engine and Magento. I think the developer experience and the editor experience is by far the best with Craft CMS and Yi backing that up. So I've really settled into specializing in craft in this part of my career.
So you doing this web dev thing since 1996?
Yep.
Why did you learn it and how?
I have since retired, but rode BMX bicycles for many, many years since my childhood. And as I got into, adulthood and into college, I had really embraced the BMX community in the United States by publishing a small independent BMX magazine, a print version.
Yeah.
Put that out every, 2 months or so, and had started hearing about some other, websites at the time, which, there was not very much on the web at that time. It was you dial in through America Online or, one of those systems, and you check out maybe 5 or 6 websites, and that's all that was out there. So
yeah,
I realized at that time that it was going to change the world because you could make immediate changes to what you had published and immediately have it back out to the world. I had just previously, this was in I had done a summer semester at college where I stayed and, kind of added on some credits during the summer. So the computer labs at the school, they were completely empty during the summer. So I would just spend a lot of time hacking away at my magazine, and had just spent about $1,000 on 5,000 copies of an edition of my magazine that had a glaring typo on the cover. Just the most obvious thing in the world. Well, now I've got 5,000 of them, and I could not believe. I was like, oh my God, I really did that. So realizing that I could publish this on a website, and if I had a typo, I could change it within a minute and it would be still, correct.
Yeah.
I knew that the internet was definitely going to change the world. So I dove right in. I would look at websites' source code. I started reading about CSS and JavaScript and HTML. And within a month or two, I had converted all of the editions of my magazine from the last couple of years to a website. Our college let us have a little bit of server space on their server, so I had a URL that I could spread out to the BMX world, and started putting out the link to other magazines and a couple other websites, and it really took off from there. One afternoon in the fall, I was in my dorm room and I got a call from the IT security department at the school. And they said, do you have a bunch of photos on a website that is getting, I said, yeah, I've learned HTML and I've put up a website. And they said, your website is getting more traffic than the actual college website. So we're going to have to have you move it, So at that time I actually bought hosting for the first time ever and migrated everything over from there. It really just took off from there. I, during college, kind of made some connections with some people in the town where the college was that needed websites, furniture companies, and I built one for a carpet manufacturer that my grandfather knew the owner of, and just kind of started building up. I maybe made 1,000 USD off of each of them, and at that time there really was no web development or web design curriculum at the school. Like, my degree is in information systems and operations management. So, during class, I'm learning languages like COBOL and Visual Basic and VB scripting and optimizing databases. And I knew that, it's great to get a college degree in something, but I'll die if I do this boring stuff the rest of my life. So as soon as I graduated, I kind of started marketing myself nationwide for custom website development. I branded myself as Aqua, which is, like water, fluid, so I kind of looked at it as, I'm fluid. I can build any type of site. Did pretty good, lived off of that for 7 or 8 years out of college. And then I graduated in 2001. So in 2007, I moved back here to Charlotte, where I grew up. The city is one of the larger ones in the Southeast and, one of the larger ones in the United States. And just had looked to kind of broaden my customer base, but also wanted to try out working for some actual agencies and see, if I liked having like someone else pay my health insurance and actually have a salary. So moved down here, worked around the area for probably 5 or 6 different agencies over the course of 6-7 years. Kind of liked it, kind of didn't. Really missed having my own schedule and, doing my own thing and working when I wanted to work, but also getting paid for every hour that I was working for, which is not the case when you're on salary. So in 2019, I decided to go back out on my own freelance full time. It had really been working a lot in the craft community, and had kind of decided at that time that that's what I was going to specialize in. I had no lack of leads for work. Was having to turn down work just because I didn't have the time to do it, balancing a full-time development position and, freelance in the evening. So I made the jump, and I have not been happier at all. I've worked more billable hours in the last 3 years than I ever have in my entire career. Worked for many, many different well-known craft development firms, some smaller ones, have really broadened my skill set to do a lot of server management and a lot of really technical business logic back end and plug-in work. And it's really been fun. I love building websites. I love solving problems. I love the satisfaction of helping a company effectively do their business online, and really feel like Craft CMS is the best tool to use that. I've also definitely fell in love with the community. I feel like out of all the web communities that I've been in over my career, that the craft community is the most open, sharing, empathetic people that you could ever ask for. Have learned a bunch and have started to really share my knowledge with the community as well, to give back. And I really feel like they embrace, or I guess we all embrace, newcomers to the language and the platform well, and really make them feel welcome, which is better for all of us as craft developers. That means that more websites are getting converted to craft, which ends up being more work for all of us as a whole.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You started during college and did some static HTML websites.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you switched to PHP as a backend language?
Mm-hmm. As PHP was really starting to get market share, I really kind of picked up on that.
Did you program your own CMS back then? Then we're talking about the early 2000s, and there wasn't such a big CMS market yet.
It was not, yes. So I did each website that needed what could be called content management system before that term was even kind of coined. I would set up a private area, password protected, with just a whole bunch of inbound forms. And the forms would end up populating database rows that would be, just like a content management system work now.
Okay.
Probably not anywhere close to being secure, but it worked. A lot of companies were just completely amazed that, anybody that had access in the company could make changes to the content on the website without having to come and ask me to do it and get into my work schedule to update some static HTML. Now, I still built plenty of websites that were static HTML. A lot of manufacturing companies that have a lot of technical data that changed pretty frequently. The PHP rudimentary content management systems that I would put together really worked well for them.
What was the first proper CMS that you used?
That would be WordPress. So the very early days of WordPress. Actually went to one of the very first WordCamps. It was in Richmond, Virginia. I want to say it was probably 2005, if I remember correctly. Yeah, something like that. So I thought that was really neat. It was very polished, even at the early stages of it. One thing I had never really tackled well was image management and image upload for the rudimentary content management setups that I would, put together. So that was a big thing for me, that, oh man, I could actually have, real image management and image upload control for the client base. So that's when I started diving into WordPress. At that time, really started leveling up on object-oriented programming concepts. And that led me to, I want to say, probably did some Magento after that. Started learning a little bit about CodeIgniter. For the early days of CodeIgniter, where, I would find business situations and problems that WordPress and Magento just were not built for. more custom development. So dove into that, pretty heavily, did CodeIgniter work for, I don't know, about a year of my career. I pretty much stuck to CI at that point. And then just kind of dabbled around after that. That was around 2010, 2011 or so. Expression Engine started getting some market share at that time. So I started kind of leveling off from WordPress and leveling on to Expression Engine because of the security aspect of it and a lot more customization and getting away from like the whole loop of how WordPress, handles everything.
Yeah.
And that really led me into Craft itself. I didn't use Craft as much when Brandon first started doing Craft, but I did start working at an agency here in Charlotte that had really embraced Craft. So, there's no better time to learn a skill set than that's what you're assigned to do for your for your job. The first couple of sites I built with them with Craft, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, this is a super mature platform. It's structured, so clean. Getting into the back end of it and doing business logic and customization is so much easier than any other platform that I've worked in with PHP. And I was sold for sure.
You knew Brandon and Pixantonic from the Expression Engine days.
Yep.
It's interesting that you used Expression Engine not primarily because of the control panel or templating, but because you liked CodeIgniter. So the PHP framework was your main reason.
Yeah, I mean, now that I work in Yi so much, which is more configuration over convention, which is exactly the opposite of CodeIgniter, which is more convention over configuration.
Okay.
I kind of like that type of MVC pattern a little better. Probably would not say that 10 years ago. I liked that, back then, if I named a controller with a certain pattern, that I got a route and I knew that everything was going to work properly just right out of the box. But I come to find that as you pick up new languages, especially in PHP, you really have to embrace and learn that convention. It can kind of bang your head against the wall sometimes when things are a little more strict versus a platform like Yi and that's more configuration based, that you can change how patterns work, to suit how you're used to things, and have kind of embraced that as more of a better MVC development pattern. But yeah, CodeIgniter works great. I still have a couple old sites that I don't really do much in anymore, but are still on a CI base, and that led into Expression Engine, which was, kind of the base of the idea of that as well. But just an evolution of a developer's life cycle. You're pro one pattern, anti another pattern until you try the anti pattern, and then you're like, wait a minute, this works a little better than this. The whole the thing with like Tailwind and utility first CSS frameworks now. 10 years ago, I'd be like, you're crazy. There's no way I would ever do that, and I actually use Tailwind pretty heavily now. As opposed to more of a semantic class naming structure, just because. I just dove in and tried it a couple times and said, all right, this actually does work a little better and speed up my development.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to mess up my HTML markup with this Tailwind nonsense. And a short time later, could you please give me more Tailwind projects, please? Yeah. We talked about your web developer journey. How do you stay up to date with trends in web development?
I do a lot of reading in the evenings. For a long time as a developer, and especially when 10, 15 years ago, we had that really big shift in the development community to using tools and packages for tooling your front end. And I'm saying like the evolution of like Gulp and, process owners and things like that. And when, like Node came out and, NPM and things like that, that was a hard period to not feel overwhelmed. And I kind of got some good advice from another colleague at that time that said, learn what you think will help you on your day-to-day work. There's not a human in the planet that can know everything about web development. It has grown to the point to where you kind of have to pick your path and know that that's what you're going to really dive in and learn the best of what's involved in that path, And so at that time, I kind of said, all right, I'm going to focus on like the front end of like, Node stuff. Really, that's when I started really getting into like Expression Engine and realized, okay, I'm going to dump, Magento and WordPress and some of the other things, and found resources like CSS Tricks at the time, was owned by Chris Coyer. Just kind of really started reading and trying out things like that, but also not trying to overwhelm myself. Being a longtime web developer, you see a lot of things come in and not really pan out when it comes to concepts and stuff. So I would really wait, 3 or 4 months after something like, for example, Flexbox, when that started getting embraced and really supported in the browser stacks. I waited a little while for it to mature before I really started diving in, because I started realizing that after 3 to 4 to 5 months, you could really hone in on 5 or 6 sources of truth and training for that, and really learn everything at that point, as opposed to trying to read 15, 20 blogs and Hacker News posts and Reddit posts, and you would just get overwhelmed quickly. Nowadays with Craft, I spend a lot of time on the Discord channel or the Discord group in every channel, reading what kind of challenges people are facing and seeing how either I can help solve that, or if I had faced a similar challenge and how I approached solving that challenge in Craft. I don't read a whole lot of blogs as much anymore. I spend a lot of time on Twitter and for the front end community of things. I do have a subscription to Craft Quest. I have to tip my hat to Ryan. He is a great learning resource for even beginning to very mature developers like myself. Spend a lot of time on Craft Quest watching and listening. I'm always tuning in to Andrew and Ryan's podcasts, Dev FM podcast. What else? I listen to like when Andrea and Ben do their Thursday, things. I'm always in there listening and learning. But now that I've specialized a lot in Craft, I can really focus on, what happens within the Craft community. And front end is a lot harder. I do have a subscription to Smashing Magazine. And I really try. I think they're a great resource too, to leveling up the latest and the greatest in front end stuff. But if I had to compare like learning PHP and keeping up with that community versus the front end community, the front end's way up at the top. I mean, there's so much stuff that has matured in the last couple of years. I'm just now starting to use CSS Grid pretty heavily. It took me a while to embrace it and, really get to where I can just hack out the code, a lot of it now with Tailwind, of course, but backing it up. But, sometimes it just takes a little while to adopt something new into your patterns, because at the end of the day, when you're depending on client work, to pay your bills, the clients really don't care. They want you to get the project done. So, if you can build something in Flexbox that works and it works great and it's going to be future proofed, then most clients are not really going to care what you've done on the underlaying side of that. If it's Grid or if it's Flexbox, then, that's at the end of the day, they're just like, just get it done and ship it, but, yeah, I try to balance work and life and not not get overwhelmed quickly, which is easy to do in front end days.
Yes, you mentioned work-life balance. So, what do you do enjoy doing when you're away from your computer?
Yeah. So I guess my biggest hobby in the last 5 years is doing barbecue competitions. Started them back about 5 years ago with my brother. There's a funny backstory to that. I was a vegan for a long time and had a vegan diet for about 12 years. I even have the word vegan tattooed on my arm, which pro tip, don't ever get a lifestyle tattoo if you're not committed. I kind of just got bored with it. My wife, she had just gotten pregnant with our son, and she was vegetarian, so she started eating meat, at the advice of her doctor to get more iron and everything into her her diet. And she finally was like, Justin, I'm so tired of making two dinners. I make something for myself, and then I got to make some wacky thing for you. So you got to decide if you're sticking with this or not. And so one night she had gotten like a New York style cheese pizza, and I was like, man, that thing looks good. I'm just gonna dive in and have a slice of it, and it was great. It tore my stomach up, but the next week, I think I had like a chicken sandwich or something like that, and my father-in-law got wind of it. He is from Chicago, like your typical Chicago, USA guy with the accent and everything, and that weekend he showed up with a new smoker and a whole bunch of meat. And he said, "You're back in the game." My brother and I had grown up in a very small town here in North Carolina where our late father was a fireman, a volunteer fireman for the fire department there. And they made barbecue a couple times a year as a fundraiser. And we would spend the weekend there with him cooking and helping out and, selling it. And my brother likes to say we got smoke in our blood at that point. So when I started, really starting to practice and doing meat on the weekends at night, overnight cooks and things like that, not even thinking about competing at that time. It'd be a nice, cool evening, and I'd be out there, it was real quiet, watching the smoke roll, and it brought back a lot of memories of my late father. So that year, I got my brother the same smoker that we had, or that I had. Started smoking meat too, just at home or for the neighbors or everything. And then that spring, he said, "Man, we're pretty good at this. We should try one of those barbecue contests like you see on television." There's a long-time television show here in the U.S. that highlights barbecue competitions and the competitors on it. And I had watched it and thought it was pretty neat. So we gave it a shot. There was a contest at a church that was in the hometown where we grew up. My brother still lives there, and it was a very challenging experience. It was extremely cold. It was in March, which is very, very cold here. We came in dead last, and I thought it was a great time. My brother was like, "Man, I don't know if that was fun or not." It was like the wind all night, and we didn't get any sleep, and you turned in cold meat, and we came in dead last. And I said, "No, we got to keep at it. We need to get like a trailer that we can carry our stuff in and stay inside, with some heat or air conditioning." It has really taken off since then. I'd say in 5 years, we've probably done 40 to 50 contests. And my brother has since kind of fallen off at no fault of his own. He's a single father, has 3 kids. 2 of them have now, matured into the teenage years, and he has to haul teenagers all over the place for sports and all of that stuff. So, it just,
Uh-huh.
he's like, finally, I'll come to the close ones, but you're on your own now. Well, my son has now aged, he's 7 years old now. And he, in the last 3 years, has started coming with me to every contest that we do and helping me out as much as he can. And we've gotten, I'd say mostly me doing the work, but we have gotten a lot better. We haven't won a contest yet, but we've come very, very close especially in the last 2 years. We now do around 18 to 20 to 22 contests a year. So, it's every other weekend. Hollis and I are traveling, 250 miles or so away to a contest. Obviously, I'm big on niche communities, and barbecue competition, especially in the Southeast, is a very niche community, but it's also like a family. We've gotten to know many of the teams that we see every other weekend. They're like family to us now. And there's a lot of brotherhood and camaraderie between the teams. I really love that about doing contests. There's no other quote unquote sport in the world, I think, that you can be happy for everybody that's competing with you when they get an award.
Yeah, so friendly competition, not
very friendly competition. I have learned a lot from everybody that I've got to know in the community and honed my skills. We've improved our craft and our art of doing it. And it's now just kind of what Hollis and I do. He is kind of weirded out on weekends that we're not on the road, traveling and doing stuff. It's just, he really loves it. I really embrace it, because if anybody that has kids knows that eventually they're going to not want to do stuff with you anymore as they start to age out. So, I'm soaking it up while and he's my best friend. I mean, we do every single thing together. He's starting to learn a little bit of coding too. He's really big on Roblox and Minecraft and those type of games where, it's a lot of that is C# and JavaScript, so he's really getting into that. And, watches me do coding sometimes in the evening. He's got a sharp mind. So I'm thinking that, he'll be able to pick up on that, but, it's a fun, expensive, kind of ridiculous hobby. Sometimes it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, and time consuming.
It's time consuming, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I also pick up a lot of things that kind of fall back into web development, and it's the intense focus and the scheduling and just really the fine art of you can be a web developer or you can be a really good web developer, and it's knowing that you can put out code or you can really finesse code to be readable and extensible and scalable and, clean. The same thing goes into barbecue. Anybody can, learn to cook barbecue, or you can level up to the level that we're starting to get to, where you don't know 5 judges that are going to be and their taste preferences at a table, but they're all going to be satisfied with the meat that you're presenting there to them. And I think that's a nice relationship between, and I kind of pick up the nerdy side of things. Like I do a barbecue podcast, built my own website for that. I've kind of toyed around with the idea of an app, like a web app, to help measure temperature and timing and things like that. But there's all those out there, and you can only have so many hobbies and side gigs before you kind of run out of time, having a family and everything too. But it's a fun hobby. Other than that, I'm a big family guy. We only have one kid, so we kind of spoil the heck out of him. I work at home. My wife doesn't work, so we're here all day. We try to eat lunch together and dinner together all the time. I'm big on pseudo family values of stuff like that, because that's how my late parents were, and it really built trust and a great family aspect. So I try to carry that over to us. So if we're not competing, we are watching baseball. I'm a big New York Yankees, U.S. baseball fan. Hollis plays baseball for Little League. So in the spring, summer, and fall, we do Little League as well. And he's out there on the field doing that. And that's pretty much what consumes most of my time now. and a little bit of we own our own home. We bought a home about 8 years ago, so we've been slowly, doing some remodeling and improving on the home itself, which is can really take a lot of time as well.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah. Why Yankees?
When I grew up, our television provider in the little town that we grew up had a couple of extra channels that would. One was from Chicago, one was from Atlanta, and one was from New York City. And so I would spend a lot of time watching Atlanta Braves games, Chicago Cubs games, but the majority of the baseball that I watched when I was young was New York Yankees games, and just kind of became a big lifelong fan of them. Funny enough, my brother is a really big Boston Red Sox fan, and if they're big rivals. We love each other, of course. We joke each other all the time about the pseudo rivalry there, but I've been fans of them since probably 7 or 8 years. I've seen them quite a few times. I'm actually going to a game after the All Craft Conference this year in New York City on Friday, playing at home. So I'm definitely making it over to Yankee Stadium to spend the day. It's been a little while for them since they've won a World Series, but hopefully this is their year.
Yeah, you mentioned .all 2022, and you are gonna be a speaker at this event. So, which topic are you going to talk about, and why?
Yeah, so my topic is going to be about a different way to approach content modeling in craft. So for the longest time, a lot, and myself included, a lot of developers will really embrace the matrix and the plugin and I openly admit I've done this plenty of times, but a lot of content managers, and I say from the client side of things, really like to see all the content that on a CMS page that's actually going to output on the front end. It's easy to manage and see. Matrix is really easy to work with, especially when you insert things like Neo and other field enhancement type of plugins that can really improve the editing experience. But at the end of the day, using Matrix for managing all of the content on a page can really lead to a gazillion queries. The big drawback to that is all of the blocks within that matrix they live only on that entry in Craft. There's no way to copy and repeat them over unless you just manually copy it to, another page. So, unless you're, really structuring the page with Neo and things like that, which still kind of, it's not really, that's more of a field thing and less of a content thing. So years ago, I had another developer show me the way that he liked to do schema is that not using Matrix as the sole manager of the components on the page, but having, and I say components in the context of a block, a unique block, but having different structures or channels, mostly channels, since you don't really need the nested structure, and using various channels as components. And so, say you would have a hero channel and a grid channel, or whatever's unique to the build system that you're using for the site, and using relationship fields like entry fields to then manage what is actually pulled in and output to that particular entry. And at first I was like, that's going to be kind of weird because you're not actually going to be managing most of the content on the actual page in terms of where you edit it within the CMS. You got to find whatever component entry is included within that list of entries in quotation marks, and then find the other, go and open a new tab and edit it within there. In Craft 3, we had the little slide out editor panel that you could, double click on a related entry and kind of edit some of it, but not all of it, and it worked pretty well. But I still really liked that content model because it would allow repeatable content and repeatable blocks across different entries from one entry. So you wouldn't, if you were using the same CTA block or just whatever it is that matched up with your model of content, you could have one of them and manage them across different many different entries if you needed to, and still be able to rearrange them, with dragging and dropping in a entry field. It definitely took some getting used to, but after I started modeling a lot of my sites and schema like that, I really found that it greatly reduced the amount of queries that were happening. It improved the performance of saving entries because if you've ever, and I know this has gotten better in Craft 4 because they really focused on this, but if you've ever, saved a draft or a page of a matrix built content builder entry that has 17 different blocks in it, and some of those have super tables with all kinds of stuff, it takes it a good 30 seconds to save, so you do take a performance hit there. So
loading and saving.
Loading and saving, absolutely. It's a lot of queries that are happening. I can't say that it's a huge difference in how many queries are happening because you've still got the same type of content models on those entries, and still using matrix, on the entry, but instead of matrix controlling super table within, in this big nested thing, it's more of a clean pattern that abstracts away the components and the content within those components from the actual entries. And I feel like it's a superior way to structure your schema and manage your content. Now, the one drawback is that you have to have a client that is going to understand this pattern. I found that some clients really just don't make that connection well, that, I can't just go to this entry and quickly see and manage all of the content on that entry because I don't actually see it. I just see one field that has a bunch of links to component entries in there. With Craft 4 and the great improvements on the full slot out editor, which now comes up as a more of a pop-up, you really can manage all of those quote unquote component entries that you're including into the page with a relationship from the actual entry itself. I think it's a great improvement on that, and I'm really going to try to showcase that. I'm building a fake website that I'm going to show how you would actually use this in a real world example, and hopefully we'll be able to convince some other developers to use this as their core content model moving forward in Craft. Not that I think Matrix is awesome and I think Neo is awesome, but I feel like there's a limit that you can get to that you're eventually going to start hindering performance when you're really, really heavily using it in the sense of that's how you actually build all of the content in your bespoke type, build your own like page experience type thing. And where, that's, as Craft developers, we're really up against competition like Webflow and, tools like that are starting to mature where, the client really can, Adobe Experience Manager and things like, that they are really embracing the build your own type page, build your own landing page experience. So, if I can help mature that type of experience in how you approach a craft schema, then I think that helps gives us more market share as well.
Yeah, some clients I got messy with metrics fields. So
yeah, it's easy to do. I fully still do it on some, you kind of have to measure the client. And especially if they've come from another content management system, like WordPress, for example, they're very used to seeing and managing all the content, especially on the page. So
They basically think in pages.
yeah, they think in pages. That's exactly right. They don't think in the concept of a build system and content as its own first class citizen. In the concept of your whole site. So I usually try to look at a client that are you going to need the concept of reusable content? A lot of them will. Are you fluent enough in managing content that you will be able to understand the abstraction layer there and understand that when you reuse content, it's going to change across all the pages that are using that content, So if one of them needs to say one message and another one needs to say a different message, then those are two different components. They're not the same component at that point. So, and I probably still will find clients that I'll have to build matrix built Neo content management systems. Like I said, it's nature of the beast, and you kind of have to really get that feel of how is this going to help the editors or hinder them. I think in probably 85 to 90% of the clients that I've done this on, it really did help them. It might have taken a little getting used to, but after a while, they really loved the concept of it, and especially ones that really need to restrict editor groups and admin user groups to only edit certain types of content or certain parts of the website. This really, really shines when it comes to that, because then, if you really structure your channels and your structures to really abstract away the type of components that are included in that, then you can really fine tune who can work on what within there. Like Bobby, he only works on, heroes or something like that. And he only does art direction in there. So, like, he only has access to the heroes channel, and that's great. He can only, work on them independently, and he's not in messing with other pages.
Yeah, sounds like a great talk. So looking forward to it. So is this your first speaker gig?
For a big conference, yes. Yeah, I've done the meetup thing, and I actually presented the same concept back in 2019 to a really small group here. And one of the agencies who had a representative at that meetup talk actually started using this as their approach to content modeling in Schema, and it's really paid off for them. So, that really solidified that, yeah, this is something that other people could probably really be interested in. Have not come across yet a site that I've inherited from other craft developers or came on board to help with that has used this model. So I think it's something that is really unique and is not really first of mind for a lot of developers. So I think it'll be something that will pike some interest for sure in the craft community. And that was one of the things that Pixel and Tonic were, kind of looking for, is that how do you feel that your talk that you are proposing will help the craft community? And I really outlined to Brandon and the team that, not only does this help the editor experience, it helps the performance and, both back end performance and front end performance of the site. So it's a win-win in both situations there.
Yeah, and then at the end, I just want to talk about your Charlotte Craft CMS group. Could you tell us a bit about this group and how often it takes place and so on?
Yeah, so I started it back in 2019, right before COVID got big in the world, and had really, feel like I got to the point in my career that I could really start to share knowledge as opposed to just ingesting knowledge from everybody else and improving my skill. I like I said, I'm a big craft evangelist. We're really lucky that here in Charlotte, we've got a decent amount of web development firms and agencies. A lot of them use craft on a day-to-day basis. So I felt like that it would really, I get a good viewership. At first, I did not record or stream them live on YouTube at all. It was just a strictly local setup. So did that up until COVID really hit, and pretty much all the agencies that I was using their space to meet at here stopped coming to the office, and closed the offices for a while, and everybody was working at home. I've always found that when I'm public speaking, I do so much better when I'm in front of actual people as opposed to doing webinar type setups. So I just kind of paused on it at that time and decided that I didn't want to keep making webinars. I just was going to wait until COVID kind of died down. So beginning of this year, spring or so, a lot of the agencies started coming back into office. Things started opening back up again. So I said, all right, now's the time to start doing these again. But knowing that the interest was out there in the worldwide craft community, I took on the challenge of figuring out how I could stream these live in person to a worldwide audience, as well as, record them, slightly edit them, and then, start a YouTube channel where I'm actually, these talks can have a longer life as opposed to just in person. Do a lot of work with the agency here in the U.S. called Space. They're the ones that do Freeform and the calendar plugin. I've worked with them for like 6 years now. So approached their owner about a sponsorship for food and to help out with the cost of the Zoom and all the other things that go into doing a real live stream that's high quality. There's some cost involved in that, a monthly cost. So I have to pay for Meetup, as well. So, but this year decided to change each month which agency here in Charlotte we would be meeting at to kind of broaden the reach of the local. So we've been at 4 different agencies here in Charlotte, and we'll continue rotating through them. And I just like to really share the knowledge that I have in craft, talk about helpful topics in the craft community, and really help sell craft as a superior solution to content management as a whole, and what you should build your website in. And we've talked about front end, plugins, hosting, just every type of topic you can think of. This month, I'm doing craft security and how to, the best practices on securing your site. So I'd say in a general sense, a lot of my topics really center around best practices and not so much really niche topics. So I kind of have, a broad general subject for each of them, and can dive into some deeper technical knowledge, but really try to keep it at a medium level. That way it could be of interest to hardcore developers as well as people that just use craft to manage their content, like client base, and beginners as well.
And how many attendees do you have in general?
We range, probably the max we've had is about 20 in person. Most of the live streams get about 15 people at a time watching, but then the recordings can get upwards of 100, 150 views each, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I do it in the evenings on Eastern Standard Time, which is late at night in the EU, or still during the workday on the West Coast of the U.S. So that's why I started realizing I need to just let this thing sit out, and people can come and learn when they have the time to come and learn.
And before we go, have you anything to add?
Would just say, to all the craft developers out there, thank you for also embracing craft as a whole. The more websites that we're able to build or convert to craft is better for all of us as a community, because that leads to more work for all of us. Just keep the faith. I know there's been some angst from some of the community and the recent move from Craft 3 to Craft 4. Any big major version jump of any type of platform is going to have bumps in the road. And like I've converted quite a few sites over to Craft 4. Some of them have been really easy. Some of them have been very challenging. So I think if all of us just keep moving the ball forward with Craft and giving feedback as much as possible to the community, then it's only going to get better as a whole. And also check out our Meetup YouTube page for all of the past recordings. And hopefully we'll see many of you folks at .all this year in New York City, USA.
Yeah, fine. And how was your barbecue podcast called?
It is called the Carolina Q Show. And that's the website is thecarolinaqshow.com. I just recorded the 9th edition last night with a local pitmaster. Anybody can check those out as well. I distribute them on all of the major podcast networks, Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music and Google and all the places. But yeah, feel free to listen to those. They're really good. You might not understand some of the stuff we're talking about, but it's not so much about the art of barbecue. It's getting to know these pit masters and what drives them and what they enjoy about doing competition barbecue as well. So they're really good podcasts.
We will link to the Craft Meetup and the podcast in the show notes. How can the listeners reach you out? So Twitter or something?
Yeah, you can always find me on pretty much every network as Justin Holt Webb, one word. I've had that. That was my AOL username back when the AOL IM days. So I've kept that around forever. I have justinholt.com with all of my contact information. You can definitely find me on Discord. I'm also in the Twitter Craft channel, and I'm always open to anybody that might be facing a challenge. Definitely send me a direct message, and I'll help as much as possible, even if it's barbecue questions.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks a lot. That should have been it for this week. If you want more Craft CMS news, follow us on Twitter at Craft Entries. Thank you for listening. Until next time, you're Thomas and Justin.
Thanks, folks.